I've noticed something change in the way that I talk about leadership recently. I talk less and less about burnout. Not because burnout isn't real, not because mental health doesn't matter, and not because I think people should just toughen up. I talk less about burnout because in my experience, burnout is rarely the real problem. It's the outcome. And if we only ever talk about burnout, we miss what actually reshapes people long before they ever collapse. Pressure. That's what I wanted to talk about today. Welcome to the Lead Well channel, where we explore the inner world of leadership, well-being, and what it means to build a business that doesn't break you. Hi, my name's Trevor. I run a multi-award winning hospitality business. I didn't come from a hospitality background. I built it from the ground on up, learning as I went, figuring it all out in real time. And for a long time, I thought I was doing fine. The business was growing, the team relied on me, decisions were being made, problems were being solved. I wasn't burnt out. I wasn't falling apart. I wasn't lying on the floor, unable to function. So I assumed everything was okay. Looking back now, I can see that something else was happening quietly. Pressure was reshaping me. Burnout is an important conversation. It gives people permission to admit that they're struggling. It puts words to exhaustion, anxiety, and emotional depletion, and it opens the doors to mental health awareness and self-care in industries that have historically ignored both. But burnout language has a limitation. It tends to frame the problem as the breaking point, as if leadership is fine until one day it isn't, as if people wake up burnt out overnight. In reality, most leaders I know don't suddenly collapse. They adapt, they carry more, they narrow emotionally, they become more reactive, more vigilant, and more contained. They keep functioning, but with less space inside. Burnout is what happens when that goes on for too long. Pressure is what causes the change. When I started the business, pressure felt energizing. It gave me purpose, it gave me direction, it gave me something to focus on. Every problem solved felt like progress. Every long day felt justified. As the business grew, the pressure didn't disappear, it just evolved. More staff, more responsibility, more visibility, more expectations. The business worked because I did. And slowly, without realizing it, pressure began collapsing into me personally. I became the one people turned to for certainty, for answers, for stability. From the outside, that looked like leadership. But from the inside, it felt like being permanently on call. Stress is situational. Pressure is structural. Stress comes and goes and pressure accumulates. You can manage stress with time off, rest, or short-term coping strategies. Pressure requires something different though. It requires a redesign. What I didn't understand at the time was that I was managing stress without addressing the pressure. I was taking breaks but not changing how responsibility flowed. I was practicing mindfulness but not separating identity from the outcomes. I was doing self-care while still absorbing everything personally. So every time I returned to work, the same load was waiting. Pressure doesn't announce itself. It changes how you think, how you respond, and how you relate to people. You become more guarded, more reactive, less patient. Wins stop landing and conversations narrow. Joy becomes harder to access, and none of this looks dramatic. You're still capable, you're still respected, you're still functioning, but something has slowly tightened. And that's why I've shifted my conversation, because if we wait until burnout, we're already too late. The people most affected by pressure are often the least likely to name it. They're competent, they're emotionally intelligent, they've built things, they don't identify with struggling. So they internalize the load instead. They tell themselves, this is just leadership. This is what responsibility feels like. I'll deal with myself later. I believed that for years. I believed endurance was strength. But for me, the turning point wasn't a dramatic collapse. It was the moment of realization. I realized that I'd mistaken my ability to cope for resilience. I could keep going, but I wasn't spacious anymore. I was solving problems efficiently, but at my own personal cost. That cost eventually showed up as anxiety and panic attacks. Not because I was weak, but because pressure had nowhere else to go. Here's the distinction that changed everything for me. Resilience isn't about how much pressure you can carry. It's about how little of that pressure you allow to collapse into you personally. A resilient leadership isn't hardened leadership, it's structured leadership. Pressure is inevitable. Absorbing it personally is optional. This is why I talk less about burnout and more about pressure. Burnout is the alarm. Pressure is the system. If you redesign how pressure moves through your work and your identity, burnout often never arrives. And even if you've already experienced burnout, understanding pressure explains why things still feel heavy afterwards. One of the biggest things pressure changes is identity. When responsibility increases, identity often narrows. You become the owner, the leader, the problem solver. Conversations outside of work shrink. Your sense of self becomes tied to outcomes. And when things go well, you feel relief. When things go badly, you feel personally attacked. This is one of the most common patterns that I see. And it's not a mindset issue, it's a pressure issue. Preserving identity doesn't mean caring less. It means caring without collapsing. It means separating who you are from what the business needs on any given day. And when identity is preserved, decisions are clearer, feedback lands cleaner, pressure stays situational, and when identity collapses, everything feels heavier. This was a huge lesson for me. Many people experience burnout, recover, and then return to the same structure. They feel better for a while, but then the pressure builds again. That's not failure, it's physics. If nothing changes structurally, pressure will always reaccumulate. That's why recovery alone doesn't create resilience. Redesign does. These days, my work is centered around helping leaders understand how pressure is moving through their lives, identify where responsibility is collapsing into them unnecessarily, separate identity from outcomes, build structures that reduce emotional load, lead longer without erosion. This isn't about doing less, it's about carrying pressure differently. If you're watching this and thinking, I'm not burnt out, but things feel heavier than they used to, you're not failing, you're not behind, and you don't need fixing. You need a better relationship with pressure. We often measure leadership by output, results, growth, performance. But longevity matters too. Resilient leadership isn't flashy. It's steady, it's spacious, it's sustainable. It allows people to lead for decades, not just seasons. If I'd understood pressure earlier, I would have been kinder to myself. I would have redesigned sooner. I would have protected identity earlier. I'd have stopped equating exhaustion with value. That's why I'm sharing this now, not as advice, as context. Burnout taught me a lot, but pressure taught me more. It taught me that leadership doesn't break people. Uncontained pressure does. And it's possible to lead under pressure without losing who you are. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like and a subscribe. It helps me, it helps the channel, and it helps people like us find the content that really matters. And as always, I'd love to remind you that you matter too. Don't forget that.